Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Retail Perch, powered by Birdzi. I'm Joseph Dahari. With me today is Kate McCormick. Hi, Kate.
Hi, good to see you, Joseph.
You too. I am looking forward to the conversation today.
I am too.
So, Kate and I had the pleasure of starting at Birdzi on the same day, and we have had just a wonderful collection of conversations talking about the industry, talking about what we're seeing, and we're excited to have one of those conversations with an audience today. Before we dive in, Kate, for anyone who didn't see your previous episode on the Retail Perch, do you want to share with the audience who you are and kind of what your background is related to grocery?
Sure. I am currently the Solutions Engineer Director at Birdzi. Previous to that, I have about 20 years in retail, doing various things across various different departments, everywhere from price and promotion and merchandising to customer data and loyalty with marketing. Previous to Birdzi, I spent about 15 years at dunnhumby, so have done and seen a lot across all of the retailers. How about you, Joseph?
Yeah, excited to tap into your experience and your anecdotes today. Prior to Birdzi, I have been working in technology with grocery stores for more than a decade, and it has been so exciting to see, Amazon buying Whole Foods, the explosion of e-commerce, especially during COVID, and have worked with a number of companies from Fetch to Grocer Key, Upshop, and now with Birdzi. So excited to dive in with you today, Kate. And maybe to kick it off, I think one of the things I'm hearing a lot about when I'm talking to retailers is we've got so many different solutions, point solutions. And, can you just peel back the onion a little bit and kind of share with the audience how did all that come together? Like, we're hearing all of this noise, if you will, about AI and all this tooling, and there's a lot of excitement about it. And why aren't retailers moving faster? And part of it comes from, well, let's take a look back before we go
Sure.
forward. So maybe you can share a little bit of your perspective on that.
Sure. And I will start at the very early part of my career, working primarily with Kroger. They're often quoted as one of the most technologically savvy grocers. And I would say the way that it started and the way that it continues is through a checklist. So if you
Mm,
think about, tech stack and what do you need for a tech stack, there are things like store ops, price promotion, inventory, e-com, marketing, supply chain. I mean, you name it, there's some piece of technology that is needed to help kind of synthesize all of the high frequency of retail.
mm-hmm.
Where that has started, and you get your one piece, so let's say you're looking for inventory management, and then you run down the checklist of what it needs to have and doesn't need to have. I would say what's been preventative in the earlier times now is that those checklists sort of still stay by themselves and they're almost
Mm,
too rigid. So I actually used my buddy Chat GPT to highlight, what are the good things about checklists. It's,
mm-hmm.
control, guardrails,
Right.
comprehensiveness, reduces
Mm-hmm.
errors. But if you take that too literally, it can take away and give that false sense of security. So things like
Right.
flexibility, critical thinking, overlap, and connectivity and exploration all get sort of missed. And I
Right.
think that's where retailers are stuck today.
Right. And you start to think about, well, how does innovation play into that, right? How can we stick to what's worked historically, what's helped get shoppers in the store, what's helped
Right.
get products on the shelf? Well, here's a blueprint that's been working. How do we not throw this blueprint out, but not have it be an anchor for us to move forward? And I think one of the interesting things you see today, I talked to a retail partner not long ago who said he had hundreds of different systems that he was managing.
Oh
And when
boy.
you start to think about, well, what did we buy? What did we build? How does that data get displayed? Where does that data live? I think historically a lot of it had been siloed,
Yep,
where the tool was very effective at doing what the tool did. But I don't think it's been until recently where we've said, okay, now we have to take a look at how do all these tools, how do all these pieces fit together? And
exactly.
one of the conversations I've had time and time again over the last 6 months is you talk to a retailer, you get clarity around outcomes and interest, and they say, we want to draw more shoppers in, we want to retain our best shoppers, and we have all these tools. They don't even know how they all fit together at this
Oh
point. And
yeah, for
so
sure.
we've been sitting down with retailers and having conversations about capabilities. And all too often, the person who bought that tool is either no longer at the retailer
Mm-hmm.
or they're sitting in a different seat on the bus. So it's, I know you and I had a couple conversations at NRF with folks,
Yeah.
and people were saying, oh, this is great. We want to solve for this. But how does it all fit together? And I'm curious if you're sitting with a retailer and they've got all these different fragmented pieces, how do you start to untie those knots and put the puzzle together?
Yes. I would, thinking of an analogy, let's take, the kitchen pantry.
Okay.
And let's say that you are shopping at the grocery store for, your next week of meals or your next week of food.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't look in your pantry before you go shopping, you have
Right.
a lot of risk. You have a risk of buying too many things,
Yep.
buying things that don't connect to the things already in your pantry. If you don't
Mm,
look at the expiration dates, you might need new things that you don't really necessarily know. So I would say,
yeah.
kind of the biggest thing is honestly just draw it all out. What are all of the pieces and parts? What are the hundreds of systems you have?
Right.
What are they meant to do? And then take a real step back and look at what
Mm,
do real customers, real stores, and real operational problems those
yeah.
systems are providing, and then sort of highlight and outline what actually is going to work. Where are things connecting? Is
Mm.
this aligned with how the business really operates? And just get like extremely critical and extremely straightforward and direct about it.
Kate, I love that pantry example because I'm sitting there in my head and I'm thinking, do we need more spicy
Right.
mustard or do we have spicy mustard at home? And I think we've all been there. And like, hopefully, you can text or call a loved one who's still at home who can peek in the fridge or peek in the pantry. But I think that's a really embodied experience because we all know what that feels like. And we're asking our retail partners to say, what do you know about every piece of technology that you have? And I think all too often there's a gap
Oh,
between
absolutely.
we know we have these tools, but we probably have some dormant other tools. And then you start to get into, well, what does the CFO think about that, right? A CFO wants to avoid overpaying and tool overlap and not paying for two tools that do the same thing at the same time. So they're trying to be cost sensitive or cost smart. And then I think you've got a lot of different stakeholders there who, you mentioned before about replenishment and inventory management. You may have somebody who bought a inventory management tool or a CGO tool, and they're saying, hey, this vendor also has some AI capabilities, and this AI capabilities can take our data and it can make us smarter and it can be our chat or our Claude or our Grok in real time. And then you've got somebody in shopper marketing who says, hey, we've got this great tool. And our tool also does AI and natural language programming and all of that. Where what happens when those two people go back and they get in a room together? How does that conversation go?
Which, I have beef with AI, and trust me,
Okay.
I love it. I use it every day. But I feel like the outline and the criteria that people are using to determine whether or not their tech stack is good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
it's gotten a little bit lazy, where instead of focusing on what do you want the tech stack to do, what are
Right.
the people involved in helping produce said thing that the tech stack is supposed to support,
Yep.
it feels like nowadays that, and I've seen it and witnessed it in some of the retailer conversations where they're like, well, as long as it has AI in it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls you and I have seen over the
Yeah.
last few months here, where it's starting to be where tech is known as an individual solution. It's almost looked at
Mm,
as an individual contributor instead
right.
of more of this complementer of all of the other business and operational needs that the retailer has.
Yeah. Is it too far to say AI has become a buzzword?
No, not at all. I think it's been a buzzword for, gosh, the past 2, 3 years now.
Yeah.
But I've had clients that have literally said to me, I got an email from my CEO, and the request is to include AI.
Yeah.
And so I just look at, from the relative to the full tech stack that we're talking about, it's just
Mm-hmm.
another line item that's being put on it. And then it's just that next question or that critical thinking point is,
Yep.
well, what is supposed to do?
Right. And I want
And
to
I
challenge that AI because it is a
do.
buzzword, but we have had automated workflows, we have had
Hmm.
machine learning, we have had a lot of intelligent tooling for quite some time. And I
Yes,
think this AI narrative has gotten so big, and I think in some respect we've lost the plot where
100%.
we're getting caught up in features, not outcomes. Business outcomes is what drives your business, not a feature of a tool. And then unpacking that even further, is our data ready, right?
Right.
Garbage in, garbage out. And for a lot of these retailers, you've got to take a serious look at how real time is our data. Most of these point solutions have been acquired over the last couple decades. It's not even the last 5 years with a lot of these partners. So you've really got to look at what was that TV show? The Weakest Link. And so
Yes,
thinking
yes.
about, whether it's my supply chain data or my food safety data or my loyalty data or my planograms or whatever data your system is trying to ingest,
Hmm.
those gaps are getting exposed now in real time. And I think the forward thinking retailers, I just read an article yesterday about a partner of ours who they've been training their team on AI for the last couple years.
Okay.
And I think it's got to become a tool that people become comfortable with, not just for, hey, it can do this really cool programming and work, but also what are the limitations, right? What are the hallucinations? What are the things that AI is a good sub editor for, but
Hmm.
it's not the chief editor for? And I think as we start to look at how grocers have this incredible opportunity at their hands, what are we going to do going forward is how do we connect all these systems? So I'm curious when you think about connecting systems, what comes to mind? What are the key questions grocers should be asking themselves?
Sure. And when I think about connecting systems, oftentimes I hear the most immediate gut reaction is, we'll automate the process. Create a tool or create a process that connects it all together. And I
Mm,
think, one of the opportunities is it increases risk.
right.
So how can you actually, instead of focusing on that one piece of automation, how can you integrate the tools together to make
Yep.
sure that they're connecting in the right way? And the other piece that you had brought up is, there's all of these different data sources. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of retailers are clearly using more of a cloud-based setting to collect all of the data in one place.
Yep.
But one of the other missed opportunities is that that data then isn't used and pulled together in an accessible way and a
Right.
usable way right from there.
Right. I hear a lot of what I call dashboard dizziness.
Yes.
Every tool has its own dashboard, and the last thing retailers need is another dashboard at the end of the
Yep.
day.
Hmm.
So, how that data can get smarter and then how retailers can centralize all that is so important. The other piece you said that I think is worth layering onto is you don't want to automate a process until it's optimized.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
then
Hmm.
all you're automating is gaps, inefficiencies, and you're starting to get further and further away from your source of truth. And
Hmm.
so I think this is a bit of a face the music moment for retailers where they've really got to look at data trustworthiness for each tool, because if they don't trust the data, all bets are off at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key opportunities that might be, less sexy, but hugely impactful is a lot of times people think of tech stack and they think of technology as the outward facing. What is the customer going to see? What is the customer going
Hmm.
to get? But I think there's a real need to also look internally. What are the operational efficiencies that can drive that? What
Right.
are those, how can I prevent the dashboard dizziness? How can I reduce those tedious, those long processes, or the need of them altogether?
It's the Retail Perch, presented by Birdzi, where grocery meets actionable intelligence.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's maybe an overlooked component because
Hmm.
it's sometimes hard to quantify.
Oh, yeah.
We have a customer that I think had a 160-hour process that we took down to 2 or 3 hours.
Right, right.
Holy cow, right? That's amazing. But it's hard for retailers to know just how inefficient certain labor management workflows are. And so I think one of the other challenges is, well, how do we know what to do? How do we know what to prioritize? How do we know where we get the most bang for our buck? When a lot of these systems have been opaque. And then I think a lot of just the way you built a retailer has been in silos.
Sure.
So merchandising has its budget, it has its KPIs, it has its leading indicators and its lagging indicators. Well, how do we mesh that with marketing?
Yep.
How do we get those two to work together where marketing has typically been seen as an expense line, right? How
Yes.
do we figure out how to resort all that? And is AI going to help us? Or where do retailers start to think about, and I am seeing more and more retailers starting to merge that merchandising and marketing role. So
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of forward thinking retailers that have said, hold on, let's bring all this under one umbrella, because then you're going to start to get more of the right stakeholders in the room. And I think in literal terms, the room's getting bigger and bigger
Yeah.
because it used to be talking to a VP of marketing. Now you might have marketing, merchandising, BI, a C suite, and somebody from the tech team in there, all trying to figure out how do our needs get met? What problem are we solving? Um, it's a fun time to be in the industry.
Absolutely. And it is interesting because I have seen within my experience, I feel like there's waves. So at some point, there was a chief marketing and a merchandising officer, and then they
Right.
merged, and then they separated again. And now I think the trend is to merge them again. What I don't see happen is kind of solving for resolving the underlying problem,
Mm,
where just like the pantry scenario, you have all
right.
these things that you're doing, and in various job descriptions, these
Right.
are the operational procedures that you are within your job required to do.
Yep.
One of the things I would challenge and encourage retailers to do is question that.
Right.
Because if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the opportunity to truly have someone with a capacity to start in merchandising and look into, get curious about marketing and how can those
Yep.
things converge, because they're so inundated with all of the different processes and procedures they
Right.
have to do. There's really no opportunity, regardless of if the C-suite comes together or merges into two different people.
Yep. And I want to build on that because I think
Yeah.
the big mistake right now is for a retailer to say, this person's our head of AI.
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
reason is you can give somebody that title, but unless they have budget, unless they have authority, and unless they have strategic insights into each department, that's just a placeholder at the end of the day because AI is not going to flow up to one person. It's
Oh, for
got to
sure.
touch all of these different departments and bring the best ideas and the best data. I've only seen a handful of retailers out there slap the AI title on someone, and
It's coming. Yeah. There's
I
more and
just don't know
more.
how you do it without budget and without, oftentimes when we talk about digital transformation, and let's zoom out for a second.
Hmm.
We had internet, we had mobile. I do believe we're in the third major shift of my lifetime, at least, with AI. But if any of the first two have taught me anything, it's really not about the technology. The
Agree.
technology is going to be there. The technology is going to work. What we need to get aligned on as an industry and as thought leaders is to say, what are the workflows that change? How does it change how we make decisions? And then being sensitive to the different psychologies that people have. You're going to find people at different stages of their career. Some are
Hmm.
fired up about technology and want to jump right in. Others have a more let's wait and see approach. And with any digital transformation, getting everyone in the room on the same page is a huge opportunity for leaders to step up and guide their organization through these times.
Totally agree.
So if you're a regional grocer, Kate, and you start to think about, all of this AI stuff is coming here, what do we need to do the next 2 or 3 years to survive and thrive? Because Amazon and Walmart, leaving retail, you look at Nvidia, you look at SpaceX, there's a lot of forward thinking, I would say AI first companies.
Hmm.
What is a 150 store regional grocer? What do they need to be thinking about and prioritize over the next 2 to 3 years to stay competitive?
I would say probably from a technology and an AI perspective, identify quick opportunities to compartmentalize that. So I know that we talked, not having more tools
Hmm.
does not always mean everything is better. I
Right.
would say focus on the cracks, focus on the gaps, and focus on the processes that you can
Mm,
remove yourself, that you can connect easier. So you're not you're keeping a really lean team, you're keeping a nice and efficient, infrastructure. And it's those little pieces that will compound and add up over time to get you to a place where, it's more competitive, it's more efficient, it's more effective.
and what I'm seeing, Kate, is a lot of these regional grocers are leaning in and they're
Hmm.
saying, we want to do this, we want to get started. And then they have a whoa boy moment where they realize their data isn't ready.
Sure. For that, I think that the partners that those regional grocers choose and the relationships they build to help with that kind of technology and AI advancement, the supplier not willing to also lean in and help with cleaning the data or do what they can to
Mm,
get it to the point of getting that regional retailer to move faster, I would say
yep,
that'd be my first red flag in selection.
absolutely.
If anything, there's a real point and there's a real pressure for retailers and the vendors like Birdseye that provide and support those retailers to come together and really make sure that that speed to market, that those big huge gaps that may be built in, that those are all collected, collapsed, and that all that value gets to the customer as soon as possible. If there's anybody that's going to say, "Oh, it's going to take you a year before we can get started," I would just I would turn right around and start walking a different direction.
Yeah, yeah. If I could give retailers three pieces of advice on
Uh-huh.
what they need to do to move forward and be successful, number one, face your truth. You got to own where you are today and you got to get to that truth as quickly as possible
Yep.
and create an environment where it's safe to tell the truth. Get to your truth as quickly as possible, I think is number one. Number two, simplify this. At the end of the day, it
Great
comes
point.
down to knowing your customers. walking into a grocery store and Bob at the deli counter, knowing my order before I even tell him what I want to do. The tools are great, the technology is great, but it comes down to Bob in the deli or Sam in the aisle serving a customer and creating a meaningful customer experience that gets them to come back to your store.
Yep.
And number 3, make your bets. We are in a time where nobody has a crystal ball. Technology is changing faster now than ever before. And you've got to put your team on the field and you've got to make some bets over the next 2 or 3 years about the future that you believe is coming and doing what's best for your organization, your team, and your shoppers.
Well, and to build on that, Joseph, those are excellent three points. You really can't have one without the other.
Right?
You can't simplify without knowing your big bets. You can't,
Right.
have big bets without, knowing what direction you're going to go or where you're going to get organized. So I think that is having all three of those and making it a non-negotiable for what that is for your future is going to absolutely, add rockets to the pace that you can move.
Yeah. And I also would encourage retailers, technology isn't the answer for everything. There's a
True.
lot of scrappy analog, no tech solutions. Put greeters in your store. Talk to your shoppers just for a weekend. Get feedback. Why are they there? What are they buying? Where else do they shop? Things like loyalty programs. You don't have enough shopper IDs. What are you doing to train your in-store clerks to ask for that when people are checking out, or in-store signage, or so many tools? I think we talked about it before. Sometimes we get so lost in the tech that we
Yes, and the
forget
people
what we're
function.
trying to do. And
Hmm.
there's a simple philosophy called Occam's razor. And
Okay.
it's sometimes the shortest path with the least number of steps is the best answer. So instead of coming up with all of these different tools and all this technology, why don't I just go ask the shopper why they're there and build a relationship, find out what they love about my store, and see what we can do to get them to keep coming back.
I love that. And it's that piece of, at the end of the day, grocery retailers to serve the customer. I love that little bit of, hey, remember you have one. Go
Right.
ask them.
Right. And remember, you are one, right?
True.
Go shop. What was your experience like? I think at the end of the day, when I'm in a customer's store, and I can reach out to that partner later and tell them about what my shopping experience was like, that surprise or that delight they created for me as I was walking down an aisle, or as, maybe I got a coupon for something that really spoke to me.
Yep.
I think it's important to live in the store and really experience what that's like, and use the tech to accelerate, but don't get caught in your hundreds of systems that you
Yep.
forget about, what's going on. And, as we're on the cusp of Memorial Day weekend here, as we are recording this, it's the season of backyard barbecues. And for a lot of grocers, you are at the center of this, of making these weekends come together for families and communities. And it's really, important work we do, because food touches everybody. This
Yep.
isn't one of those esoteric industries. We all eat every day. And I'm just grateful to be part of this industry and work with folks like yourself, Kate.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure talking to you, Joseph.
Well, I want to wrap that up here and thank you guys all for tuning into the Retail Perch today. You can visit us at birdzI.com, Birdzi, and all of our Retail Perch episodes will be there, as well as on your favorite Spotify, Apple Music, or platform of choice. So thanks so much for joining today, Kate, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to The Retail Perch. Follow us on LinkedIn at The Retail Perch for new episodes and updates. For more resources, visit birdzI.com. Catch you next time.